Mica, you bring a wealth of experience to the table. Sales ops, transformation, disruption, you name it. There's so many different ways we can take this conversation, and I'm super excited to dig into one of your courageous decisions. So why don't you tee it up for us a little bit? Give us the context. Where were you at? What were you thinking about? What was happening? Just give us and the audience a little bit of context around what was leading up to your courageous decision.
Yes. So I thought long and hard about, because I feel like I've had a number of courageous decisions, but top of mind for me, just kind of living in this, surreal time is one that, a decision that I made early in 2020, actually, just when the pandemic first took hold and we were in our lockdown. But it was just before George Floyd's murder. And I've been in a corporate career for, 30 years. And the way I was always, brought up career-wise, but even, as I have been raised, and I'm biracial, Black Japanese, half my family immigrated from Japan to Hawaii, other half, kind of surfaced, through slavery, right? So just have a unique perspective and herstory, whereby you just don't talk, Ruben, about politics. You don't talk about race. You don't talk about religion. These are things that are for the home and really shouldn't be brought into the workplace. And that's something that I just had as my innate way of handling myself in corporate America. But a week before George Floyd's murder, I got a request from our diversity and inclusion team. They decided, as part of a series to just help with wellness across the company, to have a panel discussion on the pandemic and the anti-Asian and anti-Black goings on, in the globe, and how that's affecting, folks, employees at ServiceNow. And so they said, Mica, would you like to participate? And there's a couple of ways that you can participate. You could be a panelist. You could be someone who provides a story or narrative, and then we share that, but there's anonymity, so we don't use your name at all. Or you could say, thank you. I don't wish to participate at all. And for the first time, I don't know, something in me said, no, I want to participate and full board. Yeah. I want to be a panelist. Yeah. Right? So I'm going to talk about all these things that have been taboo for my, 20 plus going on 30 year career. And I'm going to do that across the employee base, across the company, and be one of 4 panelists. And I was very honest and forthright and talked about just how angry I was. And I could talk from both perspectives because I am, both Black and, Japanese. And it was a little bit scary because I wasn't sure, how either my chain of command, might respond to, some of this discussion being kind of brought to the surface, nor the rest of the employee base. But instead, it did the opposite, Ruben. There was an outpour of folks who said, thank you. Thank you for, being just so vulnerable and sharing, how this is affecting you personally. And I share in some of those, feelings and the like. And from that point on, I made a point of it is absolutely imperative to have empathetic leadership and be vulnerable. And I'll coin, Brene Brown, who's a favorite of mine, just be, that's how you have human connection, is by, showing and displaying your own vulnerability in an authentic way.
So daring great, daring great is one. Okay, so much to unpack here. I love this. Can we? You're heading into a pandemic now. These feelings that you had. I'm half Persian, half Norwegian. born in London, grew up overseas. The best part is I can fit in anywhere. The worst part is I don't really ever feel like I fit in anywhere. It's a really interesting dichotomy. I don't know if that's something you share or not. You've been going through a career. You've been told implicitly or explicitly not to talk about politics or race or religion or whatnot. Was that brewing inside of you? Do you think there was something crock-potting inside of you that wanted to come out, and it just so happened to come out in early 2020, early to mid 2020?
I think so. I think I could feel, in a executive leadership position at my company, that my own organization was kind of looking at me and, what are you about? What are you feeling? Here, I'm struggling. Are you? And so I think that was just kind of brewing in me. And ironically, or, serendipitously, then here comes the call, right? Yeah. Hey, Mica, would you like to participate? And here are the options. And I said, emphatically, yeah, I want to be a panelist. And then you know what happened, Ruben? A week later, 1 week later is when George Floyd's murder happened. Right. I would have been so upset if I could have had a voice and a platform to express my own anger leading up to that, if I had decided to be silent and complicit. Yes. And so I really would have regretted it. So I'm so glad that, something inside me, to your point, kind of was bubbling there. And so as time-wise, I released that. And I did so just on the precipice of what then became worldwide global social unrest.
Absolutely.
Yeah? And again, from that point forward, I think I kind of broke the seal with my own team. And I think it, may have potentially, what's the right word? It allowed for a deeper type of intimacy across not just my own organization, but cross-functionally. And we're trying to drive internal transformation. You have to have trust in order to do that. Even with the best laid plans and all of the, added resources and investment, you have to be able to collaborate and trust one another in order to deliver on that and execute. And I think that has then forged and formed the underpinning of how we're doing that. As each thing has happened, now fast forward, then you go to the beginning of last year, you enter the year, what? Capitol riots, what? So again, folks are experiencing trauma. Let's talk about it. And how that, you might need a break. Do that. You don't have to hide that. You don't have to feel ashamed about, experiencing and having that just wear on you and say, you know what, I need to talk about this, or I need a break, or, I need something else. And so are there resources available to help me? And there are. Our company has done a fabulous job in that regard. And then here we are again in the beginning of 2022. And we're seeing, this resurgence with new variant. And again, it's weighing on people's minds. Events have canceled. We thought we were going to resume in-person kind of walk-the-wall sessions, which are so critical when you're doing transformation from a as-is and to-be envisioning with the right subject matter experts and the like. We had big plans for that in the February timeframe, and nope, we're having to repivot and reimagine that in a virtual world.
Right. But, constantly shocked, right? The shocks don't end, and so it's how do you create that space for the voices? I love it. So you made this big bold decision that like I'm all in. I had the options of how I wanted to deliver my message and my story, right? Dee and I gave you options for how you want to do so, and you said no, I'm all in. I'm showing up. I'm making a bold declaration, right? I'm showing up. Like, I love that. And then, like you said, a week later, George Floyd was executed. There were a lot of things that the timing of it was just so incredibly powerful. You made a decision. Any second guessing, any nerves, right? You had that bold moment. I don't know how many days it was between the bold moment and you actually did it. I don't know if it was 3 days, 5 days, 2 weeks. I don't know. What about that period in between? Did your courage wax and wane a little bit?
The only time I, kind of had that, oh gosh, I don't know if you remember in Jerry Maguire. I don't know why this is kind of like, so, he had this epiphany in the middle of the night and went out to Kinko's to like print out his mission statement, made all these copies, delved them all out. And then right as he was recognizing, oh boy, they're going to start to read this, he called the front desk, if you remember from the movie, and said, have those mission statements all been distributed? Yeah, yes, sir, Jerry Maguire, they all have. And he's like, oh my goodness. So yes, I had a similar Jerry Maguire experience, but it was only right after the call. Okay.
Right after the call. Okay.
Yeah, right after the panel had concluded, I'm like, oh gosh, what did I say? Was I too, angered? And, because I did a juxtaposition on, what had happened, frankly, back in the early 90s in LA to today. And that was a 30-year time span to then see nothing has seemingly changed, from Rodney King to George Floyd, or prior to, because this was a week before George Floyd, what we had seen with, Ahmaud Arbery and various others. And so in any case, my point being, I was very, very, what's the right word? I didn't hold back. I think you said it. And so was that too much?
Yeah.
And so that's just the brief period. But again, we've got an amazing family here at Service Now, and I was getting, the inverse. Thank you so much, Mica. Really appreciate, your thoughts. Even folks that didn't join for the panel, that then later watched the recording. Oh, Mica, I had a chance to look at the panel. Thank you so much. So again, I was immediately, validated that nope, that was the right call. But yes, I had that brief Jerry Maguire moment.
But do you think that brief Jerry Maguire moment was proof that you really did push yourself out of your comfort zone, right? They go hand in hand to a certain extent, even if it's just for, 30 seconds or whatever, because you got beautiful validation afterwards, which I think is wonderful. Do you think that's a sign that, hey, I really maxed out on this one? I took it to the limit?
Yeah, and there's umpteen quotes and the like about the minute you're comfortable, you've stopped growing.
Yeah.
And here's another, kind of Brene Brown, reference. I believe that wholeheartedly. When you aren't experiencing that kind of uncomfortable, vulnerability, then you probably haven't stretched yourself enough. Yeah. And I've got another narrative for you, if I may, on that.
Yeah.
So this is a different story and maybe another decision. But early in my 20s, before I even knew who Brene Brown was, I had a close friend, architect by trade, who decided to break out and go after her true passion of being an abstract painter. And so to support her, I made a decision. I want to support her. What's the best way to do that? I said, I'd love to commission you to do a piece for me for my home. I didn't have much money, so we, came up with some, pretty low value that probably just paid for materials. And so, wow, I'm going to be her first commission piece. As she moves from architecture, solid career, one of the top architecture firms in San Francisco, to then, I don't know when's my next meal coming? Do I have any money? And so, any case, so go after this. She says, well, how do you want this painting to look? I said, I have an MBA in finance. I don't know anything about painting and art. How about, and I just came up with this, how about the painting eludes two emotions, fear and vulnerability? She's like, whoa, those are really powerful words. And I said, and yes, they are often construed as a negative connotation. Right? Fear, vulnerability, those are not, when you think, oh, happy thoughts, you don't think of fear and being vulnerable. But I said, to me, when you are experiencing that, that's when you dig deep and become, who are you really? And so that's what I said. I love the dichotomy, the juxtaposition, because it is an inflection point and it's an opportunity, right, for you to become the next best version of yourself. Yeah. And so anyway, that painting still hangs in my living room. And my girlfriend is a very accomplished artist, featured recently at Art Basel in Miami in December. But in any case, so another story for you of maybe not my decision, it was hers, but how I supported and enabled, a close friend through their courageous decision.
I love that. You put your money where your mouth was, and you invested into somebody else's dream, right? You invested into her moment of courage, right? Mm-hmm. And so in your job today, when you've had experiences like that with your friend, or you've had experiences where you've you created a huge wake behind you by allowing for these type of conversations. Have you noticed that in the way your teams function, ideas are generated? Have you been surprised by some of the things that have come out that have helped you guys as an organization in maybe a competitive way?
Yeah, so to kind of bring maybe, some of the outside of work back into work, yes, definitively. Again, it's that deepening of the trust that I see across my direct reports, across some of my functional leads with their partners and collaborators across the organization. The more you are both, kind of authentic and transparent with others, the more you then establish that deepened trust, and then the better you're able to team and partner. And so I have seen that pay off in droves. Now, that was critical, frankly, that kind of vulnerability that's displayed in empathetic leadership, throughout 2020. I saw where some of that, frankly, I'll be honest with you, Ruben, through 2021 became not enough.
Okay.
Yeah. So people, what I mean by that is you can have, these sessions where you are maybe bringing in mindfulness coaches or, actual, therapists to have sessions. And now you're encouraging folks to kind of be open and honest. A couple of things to just recognize. That's not for everybody. Some people prefer, right? They are more private. They don't want that. So, you have to be careful. What might work best for some employees is like, oh my gosh, I'm so introverted. I don't want to talk ad nauseum about what's happening in my life and what I'm feeling. And so you have to balance that. The other is at some point, doing all of that through a virtual setting, I don't know, it just doesn't really cut it. There's something about, having that human connection through more than the visual and audible sense. Yeah. You need the other senses as well.
That energy. You need to be that energy. I get it. I totally get it. What does that look like? I love where you put that distinction as well, because some people can feel the reverse pressure. Like, hey, I like to keep my work life and my private life separate. That gives me joy, for example, right? I'm not talking about me now, but I'm talking in more broad generalities. That's interesting because you add another layer of complexity to the conversation, right? And then I'd love to also figure out in 2022, have you started thinking about some strategies to bring people together, or some strategy, because your plans just got disrupted, it sounds like, or pushed or adjusted. So is this making sense? I'd love to dig into both those two a little bit more.
Yeah. So I guess, the takeaway that I have from, just recognizing that what could be best for one in terms of, really being forthright and sharing is not a cup of tea for, another. So be careful, right? Recognize that you need to meet people where they are and what they most feel most comfortable with, The other thing just related to you've got vulnerability, you've got the authenticity, you have the empathy in the workplace, but how do you really establish that trust through human connection when you have to do it virtually?
Right.
And frankly, the only other way is through some type of shared experience. Okay. And so here is where I have aimed to pivot, at least within my organization, to, hey, is there some like community outreach of that we can do as a collective?
Yeah.
Where we are helping others in some way that then, allows for us to then deepen our relationship albeit still in a virtual, capacity, or even with cross-functional stakeholders. So we have been started kind of tail end of last year doing some of that. And you'd be surprised, there's a number of outlets to form a team and then go do, community outreach in a virtual way. And then that is something that now you have shared as a unit that you can, establish that relationship foundation that you could then build your house from there. So.
I love where you're going there. We do a lot of work in shared experiences, transcending biases, driving growth. I mean, I love that. I love taking people offsite to have a transcending experience and putting them back inside an organization. It's a really interesting process, especially with best perspective and energy. What do you think, for leaders right now who have to balance empathy where their teams are at, and 2022, any final words of wisdom on how you're thinking about being in the transformation space, about how you're thinking about laying your plans, being open to shocks? What's your mindset going into this year? How are you mentally bracing yourself for the unknown?
Yeah, so here is where you just need to, again, be flexible, fluid, agile. The thing that I have taken hold of, though, is you cannot fill other people's cup if your cup is empty.
Okay.
And so, oddly, in order to be more selfless and really, work to inspire and drive some of the internal innovation transformation, I need to make sure that I'm okay. I'm whole. And I've been encouraging that more so across my team. So I know that sounds counterintuitive, but I'm really holding tight on this, impressing upon people the importance of self-care, especially now that we see we are continuing what we thought may have been a sprint to, this is a clear marathon, because it's almost a full 2 years later, and it's like we've reverted back. I'll start, end how we started the call. It feels like we've reverted back to where we were like March of 2020. And so take care of yourself so that you can be the best version of yourself to others, to continue to inspire, to continue to uplift, to continue to show up, really, really focusing on that authentic vulnerability and empathetic leadership, but take care of yourself first. Otherwise, you're not going to make it the full length of that marathon.
I love what you're saying. What I'm hearing you say as well is you can't give away, putting my words, so you can't give away what you don't have. Right? If you don't have it, you can't give it away. Is that correct? Am I tracking with you?
You are tracking with me.
Okay. I love that. I love that. I think that's so important. It's like the airlines. I mean, I know it's a classic example, right? But you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can help someone else, right? So last question for you. Can you detect when you're getting close to burnout, fatigue, running on empty? Can you detect it? Like, can you sense it? Or do you see it show up in the way you act? Like, or is it a combination of two?
It's probably more the latter, to be honest, Ruben. And what I can see is, maybe a difficult situation. I could see it just maybe, see me to like occupy more space than it really needs. Or, and I'll use my adjective, I could see myself being a little prickly. And so when I see myself being a little bit prickly, maybe, I don't know, snapping back or not, glass half empty instead of glass half full, I could see it and it manifests in how I respond to others. And that's my cue. Oh boy, I better, I'm going to close the laptop. I'm not working anymore, for the rest of tonight. Let's take a pause, recharge. And, everybody hopefully knows what their happy place is, how they refuel or, refuel the soul or fill the heart. And so I aim to go do one of those things.